this next idea might get me fired, but I can't not show it to you, because if I don't show you this idea, I'm not doing my job.
Hey, what's up, people? It's Brandon Ferris, and you're listening to A Quick Read, an advertising podcast that talks book smarts and street smarts with people who have been there, done that. Today's guest is creative director Pat Morgan. He's worked at big agencies and developed small brands. We dig into Seth Godin's Purple Cow and riff on what's remarkable. You know what to do. Tune in and turn up. Hey, what's up, Pat? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to be here with you.
Oh, I'm so excited, man, that you are on the show this week. I tell you, it means so much to me, buddy. I over the years, we've collaborated on some things, but man, this means the world. So thanks so much for joining. And I'm so excited you chose Purple Cow. Talk about that. Why that?
Yeah, I think Purple Cow, to me, it's an easy read, right? It's quick. And I'm not for everybody out in the audience who is looking for a great advertising book. A, there aren't very many of them, and B, the ones that aren't good tend to be longer too. So they're kind of overcompensating a bit. And this book is not doing that at all. It sticks right to the facts that are going to help you improve the work you're doing for your brands, or you can even extend a lot of what Seth talks about in this book to how you brand yourself, how you make your team stand out. I think it goes beyond just advertising to me and actually has applications for life. So that was my reasons for picking it were many. One was laziness, but also a lot of the function of the book, I think, really speaks to me.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's a great book, and I think again, if you haven't out there, listeners, if you haven't read anything from Seth Godin, definitely go check him out. He's the king of marketing, advertising, pop culture books. He's always saying something interesting. And but before we dive into that and start to look at some of those big ideas, I'm dying to know, man. Did you grow up always wanting to be in advertising?
It's crazy, right? I kind of did. Yeah. I mean, before I really knew there was a thing called graphic design, before I knew there was a thing called commercial art, as they called it at the time, I would make up ads for things like shoes. Back in the day, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Mark Aguirre, Isaiah Thomas all wore Converse weapons. They were these badass Converse basketball shoes. I don't know if you remember the weapon.
Yeah.
But it was Nike before, it was like Air Jordan before Air Jordan, right?
Yeah.
So
you're dating yourself there a little bit.
I know. I've actually heard stories about them. I didn't actually wear them. But yeah, basically, I was enamored with the NBA and with basketball. It was sort of the height of the NBA's popularity, and some great dynastic rivalries going on at the time. And so I would make ads for Magic shoes and Bird's shoes, and I'd make posters for them. And not that they were going anywhere at all. I would just draw them,
That's great, man.
I'd come up with headlines for them, and I'd the whole thing, man. I would lay it out to look like a shoe photo shoot, except it was all drawn by like colored pencil.
Man, that is awesome, man. So from there, you sort of took your first step onto the advertising court, so to speak, and ultimately, let's get to the first real gig. At what point did you actually get paid to be in this biz?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I went to school in Wisconsin at a university called the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Not an amazing, at the time, placement program for graphic design, although the program was very, very good. So I moved to Cincinnati to start looking for work, and basically knew nothing about the industry, nothing about what agencies in Cincinnati were good or big, or even, when I was looking in the phone book, what was an agency and what was a printer, or what was when I send them my resume, is it going to be a quick printer, or is it going to be an actual agency? So came to Cincinnati and sent out just resume after resume and just tried to learn my way around town. And the first job that I got was for a direct mail company called Reach Publishing Systems.
Okay.
And they make Reach magazine.
If you're looking for a pizza coupon, that's where you go.
That's exactly right. So it wasn't high-end work, but it was almost like an extension of school for me. I learned a lot of production skills. I learned a lot of actual advertising lingo, and I met a lot of people that I would go on to have relationships with for longer periods of time throughout my career. So my first real advertising agency work or design studio work was with a company called Sita, Appleman and Schoell, which later got bought out by Landor. So that was my first real feeling like I made it kind of job. I think I was 24, 25 at the time. And, working on big brands, big P&G brands, working on, packaging for Tide, or working on in-store standees for Sunny D, or working on brands that I had always seen throughout my life and thought it would be cool to work on when I was a kid.
Well, hey, there's nothing cooler than Sunny D when you're a kid. Hey, Mom.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mom, where's the Sunny D?
What's up, Mom?
That's some classic stuff right there.
Absolutely.
Well, that's cool, man. So why don't you bring us up to speed? Give us a couple of your greatest hits along the way, as far as some of the agencies you're at, and then just get us where you're at now, and then
Sure.
we'll have a nice understanding as we jump into to Purple Cow.
Sure. Over the years, I worked multiple times at Landor. I worked at a company called Bridge Worldwide, which eventually became Possible, which is now Gray or AKQA, depending on how you look at it. And so those are kind of the biggies. More recently, I worked for a franchise development company that developed the brand Cycle Bar. Which has grown very rapidly from a single location to one that has a nationwide and even an international footprint. And right now, I'm doing brand consulting. I went into business for myself a year ago, and it's the best decision I've ever made. I can't tell you how happy I am to have done that.
Yeah, that's great, man. So it sounds like you've had the opportunity to work in some big shops working on global brands, but then you've also had opportunity maybe working with some startups and helping, young brands like Cycle Bar and others really find their footing and their way, or I guess for Cycle Bar to find their road, their path ahead, right? So I think that experience is what I thought was really interesting, as I thought about, some people that I wanted to get on this show. And so I think that's the kind of thing that I think can be really insightful. So I want to jump in to Purple Cow, and I want to jump into sort of the opening statement, and Seth tells this great, anecdote about driving in the countryside with his family and, seeing all these cows, and they were sort of interesting looking cows, but then after a certain amount of time, the interest wore off and they just became cows, and they really weren't that interesting anymore. And he makes his opening statement in the book and talks about, now, what if there was a purple cow? Wouldn't that be remarkable? And so I ask that to you. In your experience, what has this idea of being remarkable meant? And do you have any stories around learning that truth? Does be remarkable really hold up in the real world?
Yeah, I think it does in many different ways. So the word remarkable, we tend to use almost like the word awesome has become, right? It's a blanket word we use for everything. I had an awesome cheeseburger earlier. I had a remarkable cheeseburger. But really, things that are remarkable are things that someone has to tell someone else about. They're worthy of having a conversation about. So what Seth's talking about there is truly word of mouth advertising, for lack of a better term. It's something that captivates you in a way that you can't get it out of your head until you tell someone else about it. And that can be an experience. It can be a product. It can be a feature of a product. It can be an interaction that you have with someone or with a brand itself. It can be in how they deliver it to you. It can be in how you open the box and the first glance that you have at that product in your home. It can manifest in many different ways, and I think that's where, he gives many different examples of what a purple cow is, and it's almost hard to find a common theme or a common thread between them. But really, the common thread is they were all remarkable. They were all worthy of telling someone else about it.
As a creative director, I guess the big question I have, I'm young in the game compared to you. How do you get your team?
Thanks for bringing that up.
How do you get your team? How do you get your team, your designers and your copywriters, to be remarkable? What do you do? What have been the tips and tricks that you've leaned on to try to get people to bring out their best work?
Yep. I think number one is knowing them. So actually being curious about their lives, understanding their skill sets, being curious about their goals, and then matching those goals, those lives, those skill sets up with the opportunities that they want and need to be remarkable. In some cases, you can, in all cases, I meet with my team and have one-on-ones as often as possible, as often as they'll tolerate, usually.
Here comes Pat again. Here comes Pat. He wants to hang out again.
Another one-on-one. Oh, boy. But and a lot of people kind of roll their eyes when I talk about one-on-ones and go, what do you talk about, once a week, or even if you do it once a month, what do you talk about? And it's not you going in there and pontificating to them. It's you going in there with a real curiosity and a real desire to have an understanding of what they're going through, what they want, what you can help them do, and how you can help them achieve those goals. And that's kind of a recipe for being remarkable. In some cases you learn someone just has a lack of confidence, and you need to feed them chances that they can succeed at in order to build that confidence. And then all of a sudden they explode into incredible creative work and incredible teamwork. In other cases, you meet with all members of a team and you realize they're not working together really well. So how can I encourage them, in a way that they're going to be receptive to work together? In other cases, maybe the individual is bored of their current situation or hasn't seen the creative opportunity that's in front of them with the work that they have on their plate. And then it's helping them understand or realize or showing them that there is opportunity there when they're not seeing it. A lot of times a designer will kind of, not be incredibly happy with the particular brand they're working on. If it's a CPG brand that's been around for 100 years and maybe it's for grandmas or something like that, right? But there's a story there. That brand has utility, and it has changed people's lives. Otherwise, it wouldn't be around for 100 years.
That's cool.
So helping them see what's unique, what's interesting, what's relevant about that brand, and then helping them show that to the client that opens their eyes to a different way to see the brand that they've had in front of them for a long time is another way you get to remarkable work.
Yeah, I was going to follow up with, it seems like these days, how do you achieve kind of, some of what Seth talks about when everything's remarkable, right? Like every brand is trying to claim the thing, or everybody's trying to do the new thing. I think in this sort of innovation startup culture that we've evolved into, where it's all only the new thing is what matters. These sort of early adapters,
Yep.
How does that, is there a space, you think, in modern advertising to still be remarkable?
Yeah, I think so. It's in the will of the team, the will of, and when I say team, I mean both the creative team and the client and the company that creates and produces whatever you're trying to advertise or tell people about. I think what in a lot of cases, what Seth talks about is, building a remarkable brand from the ground up. And that is certainly, one way to do it, but most brands are already built, right? So, how do you take a brand that maybe is something that was a purple cow once and then do something with it that returns it to being a purple cow? If you think of, let's say, Old Spice, which it's got old right there in the name, right? It was not a brand that was kind of at the forefront of people's minds, and it took a really dedicated and incredible creative team years to convince the brand to do something that was truly a purple cow campaign for that brand and a purple cow communication. And in fact, it completely changed the entire ethos of the brand. It ended up, influencing the types of products that they developed, the ongoing line extensions that they created. And it wasn't something where they just went in one day and were like, hey, let's do the man your man could smell like. It was something that creative team pitched that campaign for years. It took them a long time to convince the client to, and that, I say that, and maybe that's advertising lore.
Yeah.
I don't like the facts to get in the way of an interesting story. So, but what I had heard is that they pitched it for at least 3 years, and then finally the client was open and receptive to it, and then it became the seeming overnight success that we all know and love today.
Yeah, and I think that anecdote is what's true about it is, sometimes people aren't ready to look at a purple cow. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of shocking. Like, it's a little, if you think about it, it's a little bit like, whoa, like, is that real? Like, that type of thing.
Yep.
But I think, one of the next ideas that I think is important is, again, and I think we're talking about it from the inside versus the consumer side, but, not only do you have to be, ready to see one or hear one or accept, what is a new idea, you got to find the people who are ready to share it, And so what he talks about in the book is this idea of the idea virus and the sneezers. So, finding the people who are the early adopters who are going to get on this thing and go spread it and tell people about it and those type of things. Have you found that to be true? I mean, is there something maybe you're working on or you've worked on in the past couple years where it was crucial to tap into that audience who falls into the category that Seth calls the idea virus and the sneezers? Have you had an experience recently with that where it was like, okay, yes, we had to tap into those people in order to get a brand to move?
Yes, absolutely. Very recent, relatively recently, when we built the Cycle Bar brand, that was we used Purple Cow as a guideline for creating a brand. Basically, we started with the end in mind. I love the story in the book of how General Mills in the 60s went to the creator of the cartoon Bullwinkle and asked that person to come up with a commercial for a cereal. And so he came up with Captain Crunch. And then they developed the cereal after that. I had no idea. Yeah. I love Captain Crunch.
Yeah, but Captain Crunch
blew my mind.
Captain Crunch will tear the roof of your mouth up. I mean,
it will.
By the time you're done eating it, there's blood. There's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
Bad.
It's a rite of passage. You've proved you're worthy of the captain after you've experienced it.
That's awesome.
But similarly, we went into Cycle Bar with a similar mindset, right? So indoor cycling was not a new phenomenon. It had been around for a long time. It had kind of been relegated to the dustbin of that's what old dudes do in the basement of a YMCA.
Right.
while they're reading a newspaper and watching CNN or something like that. And something had changed at the time in that marketplace, and that something was called SoulCycle. SoulCycle came out and changed people's. It was a true purple cow. It changed people's idea of what indoor cycling could be, of what stationary biking could be.
Yeah, they essentially
made it exciting.
They essentially like married cycling with like jazzercise, right, or Zumba or something.
Yeah. So indoor cycling became an experience. They brought in these incredibly hip instructors. I mean, it's been, there are skits on Saturday Night Live about the names of the instructors, and it's become such an iconic brand because it was so different. Yeah. Our thinking on it was, it's an amazing experience. It's incredible, but it's exclusive, right? It's kind of like the Mean Girls Club. It's sort of a little bit, you can't sit with us, So what we wanted to do is build a brand that had an amazing, exciting, healthy experience that encouraged people to come in and do it and improve their health, improve their fitness, and improve their overall mindset. But be accessible to everyone, where when you came in, you felt like it was family. You felt like if you missed a class, you were missing hanging out with your friends. And then that community connection is difficult to break once you have it, right? And as you're doing a lot of these things, as you're building a brand like that, it feels wrong when you've been in the industry for so long, because we're typically tasked with communicating about a brand that already exists and developing on top of other people's work. When you're starting from scratch and really you've already got the end in mind of what you want this to be, you're just kind of putting the meat on those bones, it feels backward in a way when you're doing it. But we put it out and we gave people many different ways to talk about the brand. So one would be, in order to have people see it, we would have pop-up rides, they're called. We would take the entire class, 50 bikes, out of the studio and take them out to Fountain Square in Cincinnati, or we'd take them down to a plaza on the river where there's a beautiful view of, the city at night.
So when you say take them down, you're talking about moving a bunch of stationary bikes outdoors?
Talking about taking a U-Haul, loading 50 stationary bikes into a U-Haul, driving it, 20 miles to a place that looks cool.
Yeah.
And giving our riders, our current people who are in the class, an opportunity to experience something remarkable, right? If you're doing indoor cycling outside and you're watching the sunset as you're doing it, that's pretty remarkable. But also, it's remarkable to the people walking by and just witnessing it happening. The class is loud. It's loud music. It's light and sound, and it's a spectacle. It makes an impact. Yeah. And many times people would just come up and ask what it was and tell others about it, because it was just such an out of the ordinary thing to see. And also for the people, who we were making part of our community, or the people who wanted to be part of our community, it broke up the monotony of the same type of class over and over again. They never knew what they were getting into when they came in, or what to expect next.
Yeah. No, that's really cool, man. And I think so I assume, just because I've seen the success of it, people were excited to get that word out, and obviously that brand has really, really grown. And so it sounds like that thinking of letting these really passionate few influence the many worked out, for them.
It definitely did. I think there were some other smart things they did in terms of allowing people to badge themselves, or giving people the opportunity to badge themselves with the brand. We would give away free water bottles to everyone who came in to participate in a class. You could just take them every single time if you wanted to, because it had the Cycle Bar logo on it, and we would see them all over all over the place. So that became an opportunity for people to kind of display that they were part of this cool new club that everybody was talking about. We would give away bumper magnets, which that doesn't sound incredibly exciting, but we would see them hundreds of miles away from where there was even a studio location at all. People wanted to prove out that they were a part of this thing.
Yeah, it's like it's like all the runners with their 26.1 stickers.
That's exactly what it was. We set it up to be just like that.
Yeah, I got clout.
Except it was a cycle bar logo.
I've done this. I've done more than I've ridden more miles than you have.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So it's, create a space for people to connect with each other. Create something that when they connect there, it's worth telling someone else about. Give them the opportunity to display their love of this remarkable experience you've created, and then kind of sit back and watch it happen. Yeah.
That's cool, man. That leads me into this idea. Another idea he brings up in the book that's interesting is this idea of being in search of otaku. And we talked a little bit about that with the cyclists. He describes it this way: this idea of it's a Japanese term that sort of means a little bit more than a hobby, but a little bit less than an obsession. And so it's not quite all in obsessed, but it's pretty daggone close. So in your experience, working with brands, working with creatives, do you find that concept, the otaku, does that panned out to have power behind it? Whether that's, have you looked for creatives that have that sense of almost obsession, and how do you channel that energy? And then the second part of that question is have you had a chance to work with any brands who were willing to go there, who were willing to kind of exhibit that almost obsession to really reach their audience? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think in terms of creative teams and creative individuals, we have to be a little obsessed or a little less than obsessed with what we do in order to be good, in order to truly excel, in order to be remarkable individuals. We have to seek out information about our industry and our business and develop new skills and find out what the other guys are doing and talk to other people about it and share our own experiences with others and kind of geek out on it a little bit. It can become a little bit of an obsession, or it can become a little too much at times. But I think, maintaining that healthy balance of I want to have mastery over my craft. I want to understand what good work looks like or remarkable work looks like. I want to know what other remarkable creatives think, and I want to share ideas with them and just share space with them to feel their creative energy and to share my creative energy with them. I think that is imperative to be successful and be successful long term in this industry, to not have a shelf life. You have to completely continue to build your skills and be willing to remake yourself and think about yourself in a different way and think about the value that you can provide to a team or to a company or to a brand in a different way. So yeah, I feel like otaku has to be a part of every great creative's life, whether they know it's happening or not. You'll see them. They'll be driving down the street and they'll see an outdoor ad and they'll go, wow, I would have done that this way. And then they'll talk to somebody else about it, or they'll see something that maybe could have been done better, or something that was phrased a certain way, and it bugs them, and they'll think about it all night. And I'm not wishing that on anyone, but when it's inside of you, you have to kind of feed that beast. You have to kind of continue to search out and seek out that kind of content because it's what you're into. And I think that was kind of what he was driving at. I think from a brand standpoint, we did something with Vicks a number of years ago that was a pretty smart kind of confluence of a lot of different factors. So Vicks has obviously NyQuil, DayQuil, VapoRub, a number of other products, ZQuil now.
I think they also make,
it's not.
Don't they also make the Scissorp?
Yeah.
I don't know that they would claim that and whatnot, but I feel like they're a part of a culture where you can use that for Scissorp. So I'll leave that there. But I found that to be exciting.
So I was excited about it too. It's strange, what brands you work on that you're like, oh, this is one that I've always wanted to work on. But when you think about it, like, how are you going to create an emotional connection with your consumer over cough syrup or over some petroleum jelly that you rub on your chest, Yeah. And one of the things we found is at the time, the company, the P&G that owns Vicks, had a company-wide partnership with the NFL, and not every brand was using it, but every brand had the opportunity to. And the NFL is obviously a huge passion area. It's something that drives a lot of otaku for people. And just by happenstance, the NFL season overlaps almost perfectly with cough, cold, flu season.
Yeah.
So we said, what if we turned cough, cold, flu season and NFL season into a months-long torture test of how well Vicks, NyQuil, DayQuil, and VapoRub help keep an NFL fan in the game, help an NFL fan get to every game, not miss a moment of NFL action, and then pitch that to the client. They were into it and decided the way we would do that is to search for the NFL's most dedicated fan. So we'd go to every market, every city, every crazy fan, and seek them out and have them tell us their story of the things that they do to keep themselves in the game, the things that they do to stay tip top for every moment of their team's season.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
we found a fan in every NFL city or every NFL town who was willing to share their season with us, and they created content over the course of those 16 regular season games that showed us, their everything from their game face to their touchdown dance to how they rally up their cheering section. It was really compelling, authentic, interesting content that kept the brand relevant for that entire time, and kind of used the otaku of the NFL fan to allow them to show their passion and their ability to stick with it for the whole season.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's smart thinking there. I probably would have pitched him on Michael Vicks and just had like Michael Vick with his shirt off, and he's just rubbing it all over his chest, and he's just there, and there's like maybe some like smooth music happening, Oh yeah. Michael Vicks.
I like it.
Just like, and then like have like a special formula that had a special scent. I don't know. That maybe that would have worked.
Smells like Mike. Now my favorite was, I used to do social listening for all the brands, and my favorite was there was an R&B musician in Asia somewhere who called himself NyQuil Jackson.
Yes. No way. You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. It was great. I'm like, that guy's my hero. I want his autograph.
Oh, wow.
I don't know anything about him. Yeah.
That's really fun, man. Great stuff, man. I really appreciate you, sharing some of these things. Now, I would say that, my latter comment there, my idea with Michael Vicks, it might have been a little too risky, but one of the things that Seth talks about in the book is this idea that taking risks isn't risky.
Right.
Can you build on that? Like, he talks about it in a way that he says that, the risky thing is not to, build on that idea. What is it meant in your career when it comes to taking risks? Because, everybody knows who's in advertising, or, those are just now getting in the game. it's a game where, go big or go home sometimes. And sometimes you gotta have an idea that really grabs the room. So talk about risk.
Sure. Yeah, I think from a brand perspective, playing it safe is a recipe for not being remarkable, right? So I think Seth even talks about, all of the brands out there who at one point, all the products out there who at one point were, which at one point were novel, they become sort of wallpaper over time. If you're not doing anything new, if you're not taking any risk, if you're not putting yourself out there to continue to stay relevant to your consumer, you're going to die on the vine. Your market eventually dries up because there's nothing to talk about unless you make it to number one in your category. Or even if you make it to number one in your category, there's only so much sales you can generate. And then the only other way to continue to create additional profit is to either reduce the quality of your product, which you don't really want to do because your consumer then over time is going to feel those reductions in quality. You're trying to do it to reduce price, which increases your profitability. The other thing that you can do then is actually, innovate. And that's what he talks about as the way to remain a purple cow, continuing to take a look at your product, whether it's, in some cases, it's packaging. Maybe your package is novel. You have the same product, but it does, the package performs a task in a different way or a way that solves a problem for your consumer. Maybe your product has had novelty to it throughout its life and you just didn't realize it. If you think of Dawn and, Dawn is dish soap. And when people talk about dish soap, they usually talk about how tough it is and it's strong enough to get all the dried on junk off your dishes. Well, a few years ago, it became known that Dawn is used to wash oil off of ducks and fowl that get swept up in oil spills and get pollution on them. Then the story becomes it's gentle. It's gentle enough to wash off a live duck, to save the life of an animal, and that's a whole other story for a brand
who
that
can't get behind that story. Who in their right mind is like, no, I'm not going to buy the soap that's saving the planet and cleaning our ducklings. That's. I think sometimes those are like little gifts, like little nuggets in advertising where we find and discover an insight or we find a truth that is already happening with a brand. And I think, as creatives, that's our job, right? Is to look for those moments. And I think
exactly.
I think sometimes when we talk about taking a risk, sometimes it's being willing to point out the obvious thing that the brand's not doing. You know what I mean? Like, hey, by the way, your brand's already saving the planet and all of these ducklings, which every human is looking at going, aw, like, try this, Like, I think that's sometimes can feel like a risk, because you're like, oh, are they going to view us as not really bringing them fresh, bold ideas,
Right. Yep. Nobody likes dirty ducks. That's what it comes down to.
Tell me this. When it comes to risk and when it comes to teams, young creatives, even older creatives, even, guys who are, and girls who are legacy creatives that agencies know, like if this person's on the gig, like they're going to win. What do you say to them when it comes to this idea of not affording not to take risk? I think, is it Wyden Kennedy has the wall that says fail harder or something like that? There's this thing that's kind of become a little bit of a gimmick or a trope within ad agencies, this idea of, failing. But what's the realistic nature of that? Is it really something that a creative can afford to do? Can they really, how do they know when it's okay to take a risk like that? Because, the other end of it is if they bomb, they might lose their job.
Yeah. No, it can be a scary thing to take a risk, and I think when you do it, over and over, it becomes, like anything else, it becomes second nature. In order to get people to actually do that, I think you have to create an atmosphere that's conducive of that. And as a creative leader, you have to be willing to kind of take it on the chin when it doesn't work, and take the pressure off those people, take the pressure off your team, encourage them to take risk, and I mean, not risk without thought or rationale behind it. I don't want someone to take a risk and go in with a piece of creative that's just there to shock the client, but has absolutely nothing to do with the equity of the brand, or has no real place for the brand to live in the work or the creative itself. It's got to be smart, and I think that's even harder is to come up with an idea that feels novel and risky, but that still feels relevant somehow to the brand, or not like a departure, because that doesn't feel authentic then to the consumer. If you're coming out and doing crazy, iconoclastic work for no real reason that feels foreign from how the brand would normally communicate, then it's risk for risk's sake, and I don't think that's right. I think failure is something that has to be, you have to build it into your culture. You have to make it okay, and you have to create a safe place for it to happen. And there are ways to mitigate failure. You can set the client up ahead of time to know that something's coming that's going to shock them a little bit. And in fact, that can create a little drama, a little expectation, and maybe they're a little bit more excited to see it when you come in. You can do it as a separate presentation. Maybe you have your ongoing work that you absolutely have to hit the nail on the head on, but you want to bring in an additional idea, and this additional idea is going to be something that really gives us an opportunity to break through the clutter, that really gives us an opportunity to break people's brains a little bit and make them think about your brand in a new way. And you have to prepare yourself, and you have to prepare your team for a little bit of disappointment from time to time when you're taking risks like that. And you have to work on your team diligence and knowing that the first time that you go in to pitch something, it may not happen. And maybe you pitch it 72 times and it still doesn't happen. We had an idea.
I love that idea. I love the idea of like risk pitching, I love the idea of like, establishing with your client, hey, we're going to check these boxes. We're doing all the right stuff. Things are happening. By the way, I'd like to schedule some risk pitches, kind of, and just let them know. Yeah. I think that's a really cool idea, right? Because then, I think also what that might do is, sometimes when you tell somebody, like taking your kid to the doctor to get a shot, and you tell them, if you tell them it's going to be awful, and then really it's not, or vice versa, you tell them it's not really that bad, and they've got it all built up in their head, that sort of thing. So it's like, I think sometimes saying that, hey, this is crazy, and then all of a sudden it lands and it's actually strategic, and they're like, it's really not that crazy, and then all of a sudden, you've got somebody warmed up to a big idea. But I like that, a risk pitch. That's good, man.
Definitely, and setting your client's mindset on it too, and a client in a room, typically they want you to succeed as much as you want to succeed, right? So when you go in to pitch creative to them, might be the best part of their day. They might be excited for it. They should be excited for it if you're doing your job. But when you go in there and you tell them, which I've done this, this next idea might get me fired, but I can't not show it to you, because if I don't show you this idea, I'm not doing my job. And then they're like, what's he about to show me? And it wasn't, it was authentic. What I was about to show them was, for some people, radically offensive.
Yeah.
It was strategic, though.
Yeah.
And it was smart for the brand. And it pointed out something from a cultural standpoint that was poignant and made an impact. and that's where it's at. Like when I'm taking a risk for something that is really meaningful and can make a difference, I feel like I have to do that. And we as a creative community have to do that. If it's something that can communicate, cultural strife or attack cultural mores on a particular subject, then I think it's incumbent upon us to do that.
Yeah, I mean, man, that's such good. That was great. Boom, that's it. Period. That was an amazing, great little closing sort of moment there. Cool. When I think about this, and I think about Remarkable, I got to say, man, you're one of the names on my list. I mean, I know a lot of people, a lot of people that we know in advertising, a lot of people I know, your name always comes up as a leader who's been able to really inspire, provoke, and get people to get the best of their work. And I can't even thank you enough for coming on and just, having this conversation and being part of this. And it really means a lot. And I think, I just wanted to, I hope you know that. I hope you know that people, the word on the street is good. People, when they hear Pat Morgan, they think, yeah, you're in good hands.
Well, thank you, man. That means a lot to me. Yeah. I'm honored that you chose me as your first guest, and love you, brother. I'd run through a brick wall for you.
Yeah, man. Well, it's been a ton of fun. So let's talk a little bit about what you got going on. I mean, it's been great to have you on the show, but like, what do you got popping, man? Like, what's your shop? What are you doing? Like, this is your time to sort of tell the world what you're up to.
Okay. As like any good advertiser, I help people talk about themselves better than I talk about myself, but I'll give it a whirl. So I've always sort of, as most creatives do, had side business, right? Had a side hustle. And over the last year and a half, it's really started to I've purposely made it a goal to grow it into something that I could turn into an actual business. A dream of mine has always been to, become an entrepreneur and start my own business, even though it's
ever since the first.
It can be scary.
Ever since the first fake sneaker ad.
Ever since those weapons, baby. Ever since I was drawing magic and birds' little shoelaces.
Yeah.
So yeah, I finally got to the point where the volume of work was picking up really without me trying to sell it. I got to the point where I felt like I couldn't do my full-time job well, and I felt like I couldn't do the work for my freelance clients well. So I decided to go into business for myself. I started a very creatively named organization, Pat Morgan Creative.
There you go.
And that is, I've spent a year doing that now. I think I started December 20th of last year. A year of crazy trials and tribulations for everyone. And I think if you can make it through this year, hopefully you can make it through any year.
Yeah.
Clients continue to roll in. I've been doing really interesting work. I get to work with small brands as well as big brands, which I love both. I love the variety of that. And I get to do some of the other things I love still, which, I love building teams. I love working with young creatives. I still, farm out work to some other freelancers in town, some younger designers and some younger creatives, as well as some of my peers. So it helps me keep in touch with everyone I love. I get to work with people and brands that I love, and I'm doing it for myself, which feels incredibly rewarding.
Man,
and then I
awesome.
started a second company. But go ahead.
No, I just wanted to before you continue, how can people find you? If somebody's like, hey, I like how this guy thinks, I'd like to work with him or learn from him or hire him, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, that's cool. My website is pat-morgan.com.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, that's a great place to go and check out my work. get in touch with me if you want to. Doesn't have to be about work. I love grabbing a beer with people. Let's get a coffee when it's a time that's a little bit more healthcare appropriate. And let's wrap.
Awesome,
I hate
man.
networking, but I love drinking with people.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, okay, cool. So, yeah, go to pat-morgan.com if you guys want to dig in more on that ad side of things. Now, there's this other. Now you have a side hustle for your side hustle.
I have a side hustle for my side hustle. Yep. Once I started a business, I couldn't stop. I just had to do another one. So, 3 of my former coworkers at my last company, and I started a company called TAP. So TAP stands for the Acquisition Partners. And the last company I worked for was a franchise development company. And when you're in franchise development and franchise sales, if you're a franchise, every time you sell a location, you get a $50,000 fee, say roughly. Most of them are around that. They can be more or less. You immediately have to give half of that to the salesperson who brought that franchisee lead into you, that potential franchisee. So what we've done is we've created a process and a system for bringing in those potential franchisee leads to franchisors at a much lower cost to them. So immediately they're getting these leads to be able to sell to these people without having to give away half their money, and they like that. So the other 3 guys and I, we've been doing that for about 6 months. We've got a pretty decent and growing book of clients, and it's exciting. It's exciting to watch the 2 businesses grow and come together, and it's reaffirming to have people see value in our work and tell others about what we're doing for them. So that's the part that I love, is when you do great work for someone, when you do remarkable work, it becomes a purple cow in and of itself. Someone will tell someone else about you. Yeah.
Well, man, I can tell you what. I know that listeners will be telling people about this particular episode, and I think that it's been great to hear your voice and your point of view and from your experience, and definitely I'm going to have you back on the show. I'm trying to figure out what this thing is, to be honest. I'm not quite sure, but I do know that I have some friends that are way more talented than me, and decided, let's see if we can have some conversations that other people would like to eavesdrop in on. So hopefully that's been the case, and man, I just can't say enough, and this has been so much fun. So those of you listening, please like, subscribe, do all the things, whether you listen on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast. And I, as always, would love a rating from you. 5 stars is always great, but I am cool with 1 star because I'd rather have your honest opinion than I would you to just be patting me on the back. So hopefully
1s and 5s, baby.
Yeah. So all right, man. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's stay in touch, and let's maybe get together on launching a sneaker brand. I feel like that's still on your list, and I feel like that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So maybe we can do a 3rd side hustle, and we'll launch the.
I like it.
We'll launch the Pat Star Converse All Stars.
I love it, man. I'd love to launch a shoe with you. I'm there.
Yeah.
And I love that you're doing what you're doing with this. I think it's a great concept. I can't wait to hear everybody else's time with you. I love the energy you're bringing to it, and can't wait to see what you do with it.
All right, man. It's been great. And hey, it is cold and flu seasons. It's around. So look out for that Michael Vick's rub. He's I hear it's coming to the stores near you. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, head over to iTunes or Spotify and give us a great rating and review. A Quick Read is a Leap Group podcast.